In this second episode, we're turning this sketch into reality. Most woodworking projects start with a cut. This was no different. Most of the pieces didn't fit my table saw crosscut sled, so you'll see me using the plunge saw a lot. The Baltic birch plywood is going to be veneered with oak. I made a separate video explaining the whole method I used for veneering, as this episode was getting huge and it doesn't involve any fancy tools or products. You can watch it right here. One or two surfaces didn't come absolutely perfect, but for the most part it's really good looking, and as a first experience on veneering, I can say it was very satisfying and inspirational to try again in a future project. I expected it to be much harder and having a few frustration tears involved, but it wasn't the case. Okay, so here I was making a basic structure to go around the fridge and to hold the tower cabinet. So I ripped some strips of plywood and connected them with pocket holes. I clamped the pieces tight with this Rockler pocket hole clamp before screwing them using washer head screws. Super easy, I just set the clamp holding the plywood pieces using one of the holes and drove a screw to the other hole. Removed the clamp and drove the next screw. When the frame was done, that's going to be in the left side, I trimmed the right side panel to size, sanded and applied some finish before attaching everything with screws. I didn't film every single time I sanded or applied finish, but you get the point. I cut the top piece a bit smaller on purpose to create sort of a rabbet on the right and left sides. I used a 6mm piece of acrylic I had on hand to keep the rabbet consistent all around. This will allow the tower cabinet to fall in place and to be locked, since I'll create a matching or inverted rabbet. I trimmed the pieces for the tower that are already veneered, and before routing the rabbets, I need to sharpen my straight router bit, so I grabbed this set of small diamond plates and started sharpening. I just dropped some water on the diamond plate and carefully scrubbed the bit back and forth until I got a nice and sharp fresh line along the edge. I repeated for the other blade and it was good to go. The sideboards of the tower were too long to be managed across under our tables, so it seemed easier to bring the tool to the workpiece. I set up a straight edge and took 3 passes until I got the desired depth. Then I removed the remaining lip by hand since the router bit wasn't as thick as needed. The rabbets on the bottom were wider to match the thickness of the bottom part of the tower, as well as to complement the rabbets on the fridge cover. Here I was using the router table to create more rabbets, this time to accommodate the backboard. I ran these in 2 passes to prevent burning and causing too much stress on the bit. I cut the backboard to size before the sun was down and attached everything with screws from the top, bottom and back, so no screws are visible when the tower is assembled and in place. I want to be able to disassemble this whole construction, so glue will be used in very rare circumstances. Okay, so now I need to apply some horizontal dividers, and I wanted to make this the easy way with no grooves and easy to change in the future. I simply made a few holes evenly spaced and inserted some dowels. Then I cut the dividers to fit, and this part was done. I sanded the tower using 240 grit and broke the sharp edges by hand with sandpaper. The whole project was finished with 4 coats of highly resistant acrylic matte varnish. That's mostly used for flooring, but it works really well for furniture. I used it on the loft bed project, the sofa, and most of the projects I've done ever since. Now it's time to make the door for the cabinet. I took some measurements and cut the big rectangle in 3 parts, keeping the wood grain continuous. Sanded and broke the sharp edges again. There was quite a lot of repetition in this project. While the varnish was drying, I started to think about the oven platform that needs to come out when I utilize it to cook. This is a basic countertop oven and it releases the air from the top, so that's why I need to bring it forward when being used. I attached 2 drawer slides horizontally over some plywood spacings. Then I attached the base, and I will probably change it for a thicker piece to make it sturdier. I installed the floor opening horizontally because it made more sense once it was much wider than taller. And here I'm installing the other doors. I made 35mm holes that were 5mm away from the edge of the doors. All of these are soft close hinges, and the installation is exactly the same as the regular ones.
Yeah.
When I was done with the tower, I applied the sideboard to the drawer cabinets and made a few pocket holes so there are no visible screws from the outside. I finally cut the yellow door to width and finished it. Did the same for all the drawer fronts. To finalize that part, I needed to add a bunch of electrical wires and extensions to the back of the cabinet. One for the exhaust, one for the refrigerator, one for the oven, one for mixed use in the countertop that I still need to figure out how to solve in terms of statics. I drilled a hole in the oven space to poke a wire through and installed a basic socket that will always be hidden behind the oven. Here I'm working in the exhaust cabinet, and the first thing to do is to move it a bit to the side and retract the chimney as much as possible. This is working with internal carbon active filters, so I didn't make a huge hole in the wall. A few hours later, I had it moved to the right place, and I could start taking measurements to build the structure of the upper cabinet. I wanted to keep it as lightweight as possible, so I made a thin skeleton that was just enough resistant. I will add a small shelf inside later to store the seasonings and herbs, so this is going to be just fine. These two track table clamps are super handy to hold the pieces aligned while I connect them with screws. Both the side panel and the door front are 9mm plywood with yoke veneer on one face and a frame glued all around to match the 18mm thickness of the rest of the build. I assembled everything, keeping all the screws invisible from the outside. This weird shape that you see here is meant to go around the exhaust chimney. Cut a notch for the electrical cord to escape, and veneered everything that is going to be visible. Made a couple more pocket holes and straight holes to prepare the piece to be hung, and fix the top piece. Then installed hinges for the door, and one of them was actually in the wrong place, so you will see me correcting that later. I wasn't sure how I was going to lift this up and hold it in place while driving the screws to the wall. I thought it was a good idea to add two long strips to the top so I could hook the piece to the tower cabinet and it should be kept in place with no effort. This is not heavy, but still heavier than it seems here in the video, and I'm not exactly a muscle person that can hold things above shoulders easily, so the strips were an excellent idea. I removed the strips and felt an accomplishment happiness for a few seconds. Then I realized that one of the hinges was in a bad place, hitting the exhaust, and I had to make a new hole. I did make a round cap later to fill the other hole. I sliced some yellow strips to make that part look more tidy and didn't use any screws to hold the pieces in place. I simply cut them to fit really tight and glued and pin-nailed each pair of strips. So everything is still removable in the end and reassemblable. The only thing left to do in this part of the build is the refrigerator front. So I used the same method as before to keep the door lightweight and applied regular kitchen cabinet hinges. But there was a problem here. When I decided the width of the whole vertical cabinet, I didn't know yet what I was going to do for the fridge. I'm not very good at predicting mechanics and how things move in space, so at this point the hinges didn't fit in the gap between the fridge side and the cabinet, so I had to remove some thickness. This doesn't look beautiful, but doesn't really matter because you will never see these squares in the final product. To connect the fridge door to the furniture door, I had to find some plastic tracks that will allow the fridge door to slide and match the radial movement it does to open and close. I was really anxious to see this working, so I installed everything before veneering the door and cutting the channel for the hand. This was fairly easy, but the guys I talked with in a few hardware stores told me that it shouldn't work with regular kitchen hinges, but in my head it seemed to work, so I was in a hurry to find out. And it did work perfectly. So I could finally disassemble it and make the hole for the hand to grab and apply the veneer. Make sure to leave a gap behind the fridge to allow airflow and the heat to escape. It turned out really nice and the overall build is matching my initial expectations, so I feel really good about it. It did take a while and I had a bunch of smaller projects in the way that created a lot of interruptions, but well, better later than never. The tower has a slight different tone because it spent more than 1 month waiting for me to use the boards after being veneered, so they became warmer in color. I'll keep an eye for the rest of the pieces, and if they don't oxidize that fast, I'll probably remove the newer fronts and place them in the sun for an afternoon or so. I'm taking a couple weeks off and spend some time with family and friends, and I'll be at the Hannover Maker Fair in Germany in the 26th and 27th of August, along with lots of great European makers that you probably already follow on YouTube. So please come and say hi. A big thanks to Rockler for sponsoring this video and to all my Patreon supporters for helping out in every single project. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you later.